Two people apply for the same job posting with resumes listing nearly identical education, work history, and skills, formatted almost the same way. One gets a call back for an interview within a week. The other never hears back at all. Neither resume was objectively stronger in any meaningful sense a hiring manager would consciously notice. The difference in outcome happened before a human being ever consciously evaluated either document side by side, determined instead by a layer of automated filtering and structural resume choices that most job seekers never fully understand, a system that decides who gets seen at all before anyone makes a judgment about who's actually qualified. It's a quietly demoralizing thing to consider that the silence after submitting an application might have nothing to do with a person's actual fit for the role and everything to do with a piece of software that never fully read the document in the first place. Job applications feel like they should work as a straightforward comparison of qualifications. The best match candidate for a role gets noticed and moves forward. Weaker matches don't. And to some degree, that comparison genuinely does happen, eventually. But according to research published by labor economists, human resources technology researchers, and surveys of corporate hiring practices, a large majority of midsize and large employers use applicant tracking systems, software that automatically scans, filters, and ranks incoming resumes before a human recruiter ever manually reviews them, meaning a significant share of resumes get filtered out or deprioritized based on automated parsing and keyword matching well before any person makes a subjective judgment call about a specific candidate's qualifications. This matters far beyond any single application, since it means the popular advice to simply tailor your resume for the role is often solving the wrong problem entirely, addressing how a resume reads to a human when the actual first obstacle is whether that resume gets parsed and scored correctly by software at all. Let's start with the basic mechanics of how applicant tracking systems actually process an incoming resume, because the technical process shapes outcomes in ways most job seekers never see directly. When a resume gets submitted through an online application portal, software first parses the document, attempting to extract structured information, name, contact details, work history, education, skills, for what is often an unstructured text or PDF file, then compares extracted keywords and phrases against criteria the employer configured for that specific job posting. Criteria that frequently include specific required skills, years of experience thresholds, education requirements, and particular phrasing the system was told to look for. The technical process works like this. Resumes get scored or ranked based on how closely their parsed content matches those configured criteria, and depending on the specific system and how an employer configured it. Resumes falling below a certain match threshold may never appear in a recruiter's initial review queue at all, effectively filtered out before any human being sees them, regardless of how qualified the underlying candidate might actually be for the role. This is where an invisible mechanical mismatch takes over, one that most job seekers never see explained clearly anywhere in the application process. Resume parsing software, while continuously improving, still struggles with certain formatting choices that look perfectly normal and even professional to a human reader. Multi-column layouts, tables, headers and footers containing contact information, text boxes, unusual fonts, and graphical elements can all cause parsing software to extract information incorrectly or miss it entirely, sometimes scrambling work history into the wrong order or failing to capture a skill listed in a design element rather than plain body text. A candidate with genuinely excellent, relevant qualifications formatted in a visually appealing but parsing unfriendly template can score poorly simply because the software failed to correctly read information that a human would have found immediately, while a less qualified candidate using a simpler, more parsing-friendly format might score higher purely due to formatting choices that have nothing to do with actual job qualifications. There's a related invisible mechanism tied to keyword matching specifically, one that creates a documented mismatch between how candidates describe their own experience and how employers configure search criteria. A candidate who genuinely has the relevant skill but describes it using different terminology than the employer's system was configured to search for, referring to customer relationship management instead of the specific software name the employer listed, or describing a skill through a job duty rather than a formal title, can score poorly on an automated match, even while possessing the actual underlying qualification the employer is looking for. This has led to a documented industry practice, frequently discussed openly among career coaches and recruiters, of keyword optimizing resumes specifically to match anticipated tracking system criteria, sometimes independent of how naturally or clearly that same resume would communicate a candidate's actual qualifications to a human reader encountering it directly. Two real-world patterns make this concrete. Surveys of hiring managers and corporate recruiting departments have documented that a substantial share of qualified candidates, in some studies described using terms like hidden workers, get filtered out by automated tracking systems before ever reaching human review, largely due to formatting incompatibilities, keyword mismatches, or overly rigid configure criteria, such as strict education or continuous employment requirements that automatically screen out candidates who might otherwise be well qualified for the specific role. A second pattern shows up in controlled research studies, sometimes called audit studies, where researchers submit matched, equivalent resumes differing only in specific, controlled variables to real job postings and measure resulting callback rates. Research that has consistently found measurable differences in employer response rates tied to specific resume characteristics independent of the underlying qualifications listed. A pattern documented across multiple studies and industries over several decades of labor economics research. This challenges the common assumption that the hiring process functions primarily as a considered, holistic evaluation of a candidate's actual qualifications from the very first point of contact with an employer. In reality, a meaningful share of resumes never reach the considered human evaluation stage at all, filtered instead by an earlier, largely automated layer that operates on structural and keyword matching criteria rather than genuine qualification assessment. The friction point isn't that automated screening is inherently unreasonable given the volume of applications many postings receive. Employers processing hundreds or thousands of applications per opening have a genuine practical need for some filtering mechanism. It's that job seekers rarely receive clear, direct information about how that filtering actually works, leaving many qualified candidates unknowingly filtered out by formatting or terminology choices that have nothing to do with their actual fitness for the role. Zoom out, and this same automated filtering shapes outcomes before human judgment ever engages. Pattern shows up in other high-volume decision systems people encounter regularly. College admissions offices at large universities frequently use automated initial screening based on GPA cutoffs and standardized test score thresholds before any application reaches a human reader for holistic review, meaning a genuinely strong candidate falling just below a configured numerical threshold may never receive full consideration at all. Content moderation systems on large platforms similarly rely on automated keyword and pattern matching filters to flag or remove content before any human moderator reviews it, meaning legitimate content using flag terminology can get filtered identically to content the system was actually designed to catch. In every one of these systems, an automated first-pass filter, built out of practical necessity, given overwhelming volume, ends up shaping who or what gets a genuine chance at human consideration, based on criteria that don't always align cleanly with the underlying quality the system was ultimately designed to identify. What connects the resume, the admissions file, and the flag post isn't the specific industry involved, it's the sheer mismatch in scale between the number of things needing review and the number of humans available to review them, a gap wide enough that some form of automated triage becomes close to unavoidable, whether or not any individual person on the receiving end ever fully understand how that triage actually works. So the next time a strong candidate never hears back from a job application despite having genuinely relevant qualifications, it's worth remembering what that silence actually represents. It probably isn't a considered human judgment that the candidate wasn't good enough. It's more likely that an earlier, automated filtering layer never passed that resume along for human consideration at all, shaped by formatting choices, keyword mismatches, or configure criteria that have very little to do with whether that specific person could have actually done the job well.